The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Triversity Talk. I am Stephen Bloomer-Teague.
And I am Wendy Stewart Kaplan. And baby, it's cold outside tonight, isn't it?
Indeed it is. And you just went off a podcast, I think you said, where it was in Bismarck, North Dakota, where it was negative 17.
I'm right. I have no, you know what, Stephen, you're right. Neither of us has any right to complain right now because
and
you know
yet
what?
I do, and yet I will. I am not impressed.
All we have to do is go on Facebook and see all of our miserable friends that are down in Florida. I can't even take it anymore. Do not put your pictures up.
Well, amen. But while we're talking about Facebook and YouTube and all that stuff, if you're on either one of those platforms, definitely feel free to give us a subscribe or a like or a heart or whatever it is you do to show your love for us. Hopefully by next week, we will have our own official domain name for our YouTube channel. Now, right now, it's making it youtube.com/Triversity Center for Gender and Sexual Diversity. So I've got to work that out to where I can shorten that a little bit.
Stephen, that is all that technical stuff that you do so much better than me. That is, I just don't even know anymore. But I do know if people subscribe and we have a certain amount of subscribers, we will have our own domain name, which is like, that's great.
I know. I mean, you feel like you've made it.
Yeah.
Well, before we get started tonight, one thing I do want to plug is our Share Your Heart talent show next week. It's, Share Your Heart, Triversity's Got Talent, the virtual edition. We have 10 magnificent contestants, a couple of amazing judges, 3 spectacular hosts, well, at least one, I mean, but two pretty good. And it's going to be a fun night. All the proceeds go to supporting the Ecumenical Food Pantry. So love it if you come. We need you there because your vote helps determine the winner. So if you're interested, go to www.triversitycenter.org/share-your-heart.
That was amazing.
And next week, we will be doing a preview show, a special Triversity Talk, where we will interview if not all of the contestants, at least most of them. So
I'm very excited about that because, you know, one thing, when you get to see people to perform, they're performing. But when you get to do interviews, you're getting the nitty gritty. You're getting the dirt. And I like that.
And I hope they spill tea on each other.
They will. They need to be spilled.
But let's not get ahead of ourselves because we have a great guest tonight. Wendy, can you tell us who that guest is?
Oh, well, I'm very excited because I love when we have people that are near and dear to our hearts that really make a huge difference in Milford because of what they bring to the party. And you all will know this person because John DiLeo is not only an author, a book reviewer. He's been host of the Classic Film Series. He has been an integral part every year of the Black Bear Film Festival, bringing us the most amazing classic stars. Tab Hunter, he does the interviews on the stage, and he's really made Black Bear be so sensational because of what he does for our town. Without further ado, I give you John DiLeo.
Hey.
Hello, John. Welcome.
Hey, Wendy. So good to be with you.
Was that a good, do you think that was a good opening? Did you like it?
Yeah. What's not to like? Thank you.
Cool.
I appreciate that.
Who's the lovely lady behind you?
Well, I thought if I had Marilyn right behind me, it would look like she was whispering all my answers into my ear for the hour. So
There
think we're
she
kind
is.
of getting the effect. Yeah. I dragged her up from the basement. I'm sitting in a corner of my office, but I thought she would add a nice touch considering the topics we're going to talk about. So
Oh,
here we are.
totally. Yeah, classic movies. And she looks a little cold to me, John. Maybe you might want to grab a sweater or a little something. More Marilyn up tonight. So, John, you've written at this point 7 books and an 8th one coming.
No, it's 6 with the 7th one coming at the end of the year. Yeah.
Not too far off. I went through and I'm like, you are, and I tell everyone, you are, as far as I know, the classic film historian. So I have to ask you, it's such an intricate area of film, and you're like an expert. How did this all happen?
Well, I guess it goes back to childhood, and I was lucky to be raised in a household of parents and grandparents, all of whom loved old movies. But I always say that everybody liked something different. So my mother loved musicals, my dad loved gangster movies, my grandfather loved tearjerkers. So I mean, I was getting it from all sides and all different genres, and it was always sort of in the back of my head somewhere, and it made me want to perform, and that's where I sort of thought my professional life would go. You know, I went to Ithaca College as a theater major, came to New York City, did the whole aspiring actor thing till my mid-30s. And when I kind of had to come to grips with the fact that I didn't think I was going to become a star, it was sort of a moment of, well, what else have I got going? And I thought, well, my lifelong passion really was film, where I couldn't help but absorb all the statistics, all the awards and all that stuff, you know, without trying, because I loved it so much. And then I had an idea to do a quiz book, and I always say I had all the luck as a writer that I never had as an actor, because I got an agent right away. She sold the book right away. And then it was sort of like, I'm too old to go to go away from where people are saying yes, to go back to where they were saying no. And so I never looked back, and it's been, you know, almost more than 20 years doing what I'm doing. So I feel like it was a long path to get to the right path, you know.
But not so long, really, early 30s. And the fact that when you hit it, right, isn't it funny how things work? The agent came right away. Everything fell into place. Now, your first book was, and you thought you knew classic movies. This was a quiz book, right?
Yeah, because I never thought of myself as a writer. I was an actor who had an idea to do these, what I thought were clever little matching quizzes to test your knowledge.
Like that.
But the fact that it happened gave me the confidence to actually do a book of essays. And I remember even telling myself, it wasn't that people were telling me early on, oh, you're talented as a writer. It was that I had a lot I wanted to say, and that was the impetus. It was the desire to communicate, and that's where it all came from.
Knowledge. I mean, just sharing that knowledge. Now, with the quiz book, I'm trying to remember. Did you get a response from Joan Fontaine from that? Or
yes, I did. Yeah, because I guess that was 1999. I tried to find addresses for some of the old time stars and send them the quiz book if they were prominent in it.
Oh,
and yeah, one of them was Joan Fontaine. And I think all I knew was that she lived in Carmel, California. And I think I literally put it in an envelope and wrote Joan Fontaine, Carmel, California, thinking that everyone there knows she's there. And she got it. And she wrote me a lovely postcard that she was looking forward to playing the book with guests around a winter's fire. So that was what she said.
fabulous.
Oh my gosh, that's like the best quote in the world.
I wonder if she was in the morning room or the library.
Right. Yes. And if Mrs. Danvers was lurking while she was trying to read the book, I
love it. So your second book was 100 great film performances you should remember, but probably don't. I have to tell you, I love the title of that book, because I am the person that doesn't remember. But if someone like you, right, puts it in a book and you get my wheels turning. So thank you for doing that. So I guess that book was really aimed towards those of us that, you know, we love these movies, but we don't remember very much about them.
It was almost a kind of revenge on the Oscars kind of book too. It was like, here's 100 great film performances that didn't win anything significant, and it's time somebody, you know, tooted their horns for them. And it went from 1920 to 2000, and so that really was my sort of saying this, not necessarily who I thought should win in a particular year, but people who should have been in the game that often were overlooked. And was often very big stars in lesser known movies. So, you know, it wasn't 100 obscurities by any means, you know.
Right. But how cool that you, I mean, with what you've done, you turn attention to them. Every person that you brought to the Black Bear Film Festival, you know, I knew the names, but I don't have the background that you have. And a lot of people don't. And we were all able not only to learn, but just to experience, you know, a time that these are such different times, John, you know, and the stars now, it's not like the ones from the classic movies.
Well, the way it started, I guess I'd been doing presentations at the Salon for Black Bear a couple of years at the beginning, and they hadn't had any old time stars yet. But if you remember, Farley Granger and his partner had a house in the community, and they were after him. And somebody got him to agree to come. And the way it was told to me was there was like a board meeting and someone said, "Oh, great, we got him. Now what? What do we do with him?" And somebody said, "You know who would be good for this? That guy, John DiLeo, who lives in town, who writes about, I bet he knows what to talk to him about." And that's how it started. And that was a really fun event. He was really sweet and easy to deal with. He was a lovely man. Just great.
I tell you, one of the first times I probably had met you at other times, but I remember you for the first time really in two places. You did the Phoenix, I think it was the fall fashion show. And then thereafter, you interviewed Jane Alexander at the Black Bear Film Festival. And this was before I started going to the Winter Film Series and kind of knowing who these actors were. And I just was like so entranced. I mean, not just by her, but by you and your passion and your knowledge. And recently I had the privilege to watch Testament. It was a brilliant movie, but oh my goodness. That was
tough one to watch during the pandemic. Yeah, not very good viewing for the pandemic. Yeah. I have to say, of all the stars that I was lucky enough to interview at Black Bear, they were all terrific. They were all really easy to deal with and nice people and grateful. But I have to say, of all of them, Jane Alexander is the one I've actually continued a friendship with. Oh, and she's an amazing person. And I'll share with you, although it won't be out for a while, because we've become friends, I sent her my newest book and said, "If you like it, would you give me a blurb?" And she read it and she really liked it. And the book will have a quote from her on the back jacket when it comes out.
Wow.
She's an inspiring person. Her life is inspiring and kind, and I just I feel so lucky to have met her through Black Bear and to have continued this friendship with her.
I'm impressed by it. People like you that are so humble. When I look at you, I think of what you've done for these classic film stars. Everyone that I've met that you've brought to Milford, they loved being there. They loved with the interviews. How cool is it to bring that to our town? All right, for all of us to hear these stories firsthand, because John, this is something none of us would ever know if you didn't do it. And it just makes our community so much richer.
Well, I love doing it, of course. And, you know, two of them particularly were like on a dream list, which were Jane Powell and Tab Hunter. Both of them couldn't have been more wonderful. But I also have to say, you know, a couple of them were contacts that I guess I had, but I have to say, like, I couldn't have gotten Arlene Dahl without my friend Michael Milton, or Marge Champion without Larry Fuller, or Rex Reed without Ronnie White, or Lorna Luft without Jamie Harris. So there's usually some other link that is, not quite 6 degrees, but a few degrees of someone who says, who I think I could get for you, or who'd love to come, or all that stuff. And then it's really about, like I said, the research, and I think they usually do have a good time because we usually do put on a good show for them because everyone's so excited that they're here.
You ask like legit questions that show that you know your stuff and that you're not just asking bullshit generic questions. And I think that makes the interview more fun.
Well, it's the fact that you're so passionate about what you do, and they can totally feel that when they're up there being interviewed by you. Now, your third book, this is 40 Remarkable Movies Awaiting Rediscovery. And Michael Musto, can I read a quote? I love Michael Musto. He's a friend. Can I read this quote that he wrote? I thought it was so funny. I love a book that celebrates underappreciated films while providing on how to fill all those lonely nights without suggesting you give Sweet Smell of Success a 100th go-around. DiLeo trumpets Dusty Gems. His glaring omission of Howard the Duck will only disturb people who think of Psycho as a romantic comedy. Right, Stephen, you love it. I had to read that. First of all, I adore Michael Musto, but that is so insightful. And yeah, he just really said it. You what made you want to call recognition to those films?
Well, I think, like you said, if classic movies is my niche, within that, my even smaller niche is the underrated, neglected, overlooked movies. Because as I've often said to people, you don't need me to say, oh, Casablanca is a good movie, you should see that. Or Now Voyage is a good movie, you should see that. I feel like though I like to be there for the people who've seen all of those and want to know what else is good that they would love, but they've never heard of. And so Screensavers was that book. And I love Michael Musto too, because even when he hasn't had a regular gig and I'd send him something, he'd say, I don't have anything going on, but I'm going to find some place to say something good about this. So he's always been really good to me.
I mean, how cool is that, right? So we really missed, and Stephen, I'll jump in on this, that, because of the pandemic, you gave so much to the community on the Wednesday night film series. I was never there for it because I was in the city, but Stephen, you'll say it. I heard how people look forward to it and everything.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, and not just, I'll ask you about how it got started and kind of where it evolved. But what I loved about it was that it would bring members of more what I'd call the Triversity community. But this was one of the few things where we really pulled in the broader community and got people to walk into the center doors that probably would not because they're like homophobic or anything, but just because there'd be no need. Just this winter film series, which allowed us all a reason to get together, brought people to the center, created allies. And I mean, it's just wonderful.
Yeah. Well, it started, I guess, when Carrie and Chris ran the center, and I guess they'd seen, I knew them a little bit, and they had seen me, I guess, do some of the Black Bear events. And said, would you ever consider doing, what it became was, you can pick the movies and we'll just show them in the center and they'll be free. We'll have a donation jar and maybe we can generate something during the winter when there's nothing to do because people don't go out. It's cold. And it would be just something to make the winter go faster, which it always did. And I think obviously we're not doing it now because of COVID, but I think wasn't last year the 7th consecutive January, February. So it has been fun. And, it's a lot of responsibility when someone will grab you and say, I don't know how I'd get through the winter without you. It's like, oh my God, that's a lot. That's a lot to put on me. But I do love it. And like I said, often I've shown more famous movies because I realized I assumed at the beginning everyone had seen a certain number of classic movies, and I was wrong. So then I started throwing in more famous movies just to make sure people had seen them. And I remember, again, going back to now Voyager or Mildred Pierce right before the lights go down to say, who has never seen this movie? And usually half the audience would raise their hand. And you think, oh my God, I'm so excited. I'm going to be in a room with 30 people. Half of them have never seen Betty Davis's transformation and now Voyager. And I get to be in the room when they experience it. So it can be quite a high for me, I have to say.
I mean, and just watching, and I mean, this was something I had never really experienced was classic film. I grew up in a house that loved movies, but it's like my grandmother would watch TCM, but that wasn't something we really shared. We'd go to the theater or watch something modern. And so this was, for me, my first exposure, and just being able to fall in love with the different actors. And I mean, I will divide them in between actresses and actors for this point, because some of them I started having huge crushes on. It's like, but yeah, I mean, just so much fun. Now, originally, you thought it might be geared to kind of pull in young people to watch these movies, but it didn't quite work out that way, right?
No, when the guys first asked me, I assumed it was going to be an audience of teenagers, GLBTQ teenagers, looking for somewhere to go. And I was going to, so the first year I picked, it was like a Judy Garland movie, an Audrey Hepburn movie, a Marilyn Monroe movie, just sort of like the sort of gay icon series. Like, this is who you need to know to catch up. And then I realized it was mostly people my age, and they had seen Funny Face and whatever. But then sometimes I felt the second year maybe I tilted it more toward some of the lesser known things, and that's when I would mention things and I'd realize, oh, they haven't seen the more famous movies of this person. So then I kind of, I think by the third year I found the groove. Mm-hmm. And so even last year, we did 10 last year because the weather was so good. We kept adding them on. And I think I found a good balance of I throw in one that wasn't so famous that pleased me, and then I throw, it happened one night, and whatever, Mr. Deeds Goes to Town, just because I wanted the surefire ones, in there as well.
And true.
But I mean,
or I loved having, like I said, showing Mildred Pierce for our friend Lorianne owns and operates a restaurant, and she's a mother. It's like, this is the movie for you.
Lorianne was always so funny because it seemed like at least the first year I'd go, every week she'd say, that person had a house up here. And you would always just give this look like, okay.
Well, she came up with some ones I'd never heard about. Because
you said Joan Crawford, and I can't.
Hold on. That's true? Joan Crawford had a house up in Milford?
I don't know that, but I think that was or there was Grace Kelly. I thought she said.
Grace Kelly?
Grace Kelly's a Pennsylvania.
For a while there,
Milford, but
like every week she was saying somebody had a house here.
Let's start some big rumors on the show tonight.
Okay, if you want to go back to old film stores, we know about Mary Pickford. Okay, we know that back in those days, the Fauchère is where a lot of silent film stars stayed. You must be familiar with the silent film star era in Milford, yeah, John?
I mean, I know of it. I don't. I mean, you can certainly talk to Seth Goldman in town, who has the museum in Cuddybackville.
I know about that. Tell us about that.
Focuses on that, but I mean, I know all the people involved. I don't know them. This was 100 years ago, but I mean, I know who they are, and that's pre-Hollywood, before everyone said, "Come on out here. The weather's great. Bring your stuff." And that was the end of it, pretty much. But when it was based in New York and you're looking for the country, you just venture out. And this was obviously one of the
country. Isn't that
we got the river. I mean, it's a beautiful spot for location shooting, and it still is. But I'm just saying it had its moment. And then, by the 20s, the whole operation was even mid-teens. It was already gone. It gone Hollywood. yeah, as they say.
Right.
Yeah.
So, John, I'm curious. You grew up in Brooklyn, yeah? Which part?
I was born in Brooklyn. I was born in East New York. I lived in Ozone Park, Queens until I finished first grade. And then I was raised in Nesconset, which is part of Smithtown on Long Island, and
Oh, I know.
graduated from high school.
That's a historical area. That's a very historical area there.
It is, especially, yeah, the North Shore has all these Revolutionary War things that happened. Yeah, it's really lovely. I still have most of my family's on Long Island still. I haven't been there in about a year because of everything else going on, but yeah, that's still the whole island from Brooklyn all the way out to Shelter Island. I have family all the way across, basically. So yeah.
So what we always ask people this, what was it like growing up, LGBTQ? How was it for you in school? People have different stories that they share.
I don't think I had any really bad stories. I was very involved in the music department and the theater department, and you find your little, pack of people, your little clique, and still some of my closest friends. I don't see them a lot, but they're still like family to me.
From grammar school. Wow.
From junior high and high school. Wow. And yeah, I mean, I was so consumed with being in the chorus and the plays. It was really a really good time. And I think I was also in a lot of ways, a very naive young person where I wasn't really thinking along those lines anyway in terms of sexuality at all. I was kind of mature in a lot of ways and very immature in some other ways, including that one. So even by the time I got to college, I still was a little immature on that and in that area. So consumed with old movies and being in plays and not really thinking about anything else till I was about 18. So yeah.
It's interesting. You chose Ithaca College is known for its theater program. It's got a wonderful theater program. It's always interesting to me that kids that come from performing arts background, I don't know, Stephen, it's so much more forgiving. You don't always have to worry about fitting in because you're just there and you just fit. And back in the day, as they say, it wasn't like the show Pose. It wasn't like that. It was just easier in a lot of ways for people because you were, what do we call them? Theater geeks. You were a theater geek.
Yeah. The thing about your theater degree, which it doesn't mean you're going to be employed because you waive your diploma. And of course, most of the people I graduated with, from my era in Ithaca, most of us are not professional actors. However, I don't think I've ever really met anyone who went through that program that's regretted it or said that was a mistake or a waste of time. Because if you study theater, you're studying discipline, which you put into anything you do. You're studying how to work with other people and come together to do something. You use that in whatever you do. A theater background helps build all kinds of character, and so and in terms of what I ended up doing, it was actually logical in the sense of I was still communicating. It was just with words, but I was still trying to get a laugh. It was on a page instead of out loud. I was still trying to touch you or make you think about something. It was all the sort of urge to be creative. It just found the place I was supposed to get to. So I think whatever people get to, a theater background is usually something very enriching. So
yes,
that's all.
Yeah, I'm curious. Who was your very first interview that you did, and what was that like for you?
Well, I guess I don't think I had interviewed anybody seriously until that first one with Farley Granger, and I think
at the top.
What's that? I'm sorry. What did you say?
Nothing like starting at the top,
Yeah,
like,
starting at the top. I'm sorry.
Start with Farley Granger interview.
It's funny because he was so nice, but I could tell we only met like about an hour beforehand to just talk over a little bit. And I think I could tell he was doing it to be nice, but he wasn't really that excited about talking about his career. He wasn't full of himself at all. But I could see once we got out there, and it's like, it takes a little bit of time. You can always feel the moment when people get that click where I like this. This is fun. And he had a great time, clearly had a great time. But I could see I had to like sort of let him trust me or let him realize it was going to be fun. Right. And so I think you do have to find, and like you were saying about, it's a lot of it's about how prepared you are. And once they know you're a serious person who actually knows what you're talking about, you almost sometimes can see the moment when their eyes click into you like, wait, this is better than I thought it was going to be. And so then you feel like you're really just having a conversation and there just happen to be 300 people watching. But right. Yeah. And so yeah, that was the first. And then I used that as basically how sometimes we did them before we showed the movie of the person, sometimes after. It didn't really matter to me so much. Like I said, it was really just about making them comfortable. And often they would share things more personal than I ever expected. I don't mean anything inappropriate, just like, wow. And you could feel the audience get real quiet, so happy that this person was opening up to them in this town where we lived in, Milford, Pennsylvania, and they'd come and they'd opened up about their career or their marriages or something that, so that was often very, very gratifying when you felt like they opened up. So.
Wow.
Okay.
No, it's great because, when you hit that intimate chord, and they start sharing, and it's what you said, all of a sudden the interview as I like to say, goes on fire, and you're really connecting, and in the audience you can't hear a pin drop. So you're like, this is definitely spot on. It was interesting this year for Black Bear. They did manage to save, to be able to do such a great job in lieu of the pandemic. But I'm curious in terms of yourself, because I know you do speaking engagements and book signings. How has the pandemic affected you? Well,
I had to cancel all the bookings of the rest of the year, but I could have probably gotten this going earlier, but I guess I was too timid about the whole Zoom thing. But I've got 2 gigs coming up where I'll be doing my shows. My shows involve film clips, and I just couldn't see myself doing it all by myself. And so I've got a friend in Port Jervis with a studio, and I'm going to be doing it basically as if I were doing it with an audience, except there'll be no one there except the Zoom hookup. So I've got 2 gigs in March. If they go well, I guess I kept thinking this will be over soon and I won't have to do that.
Amen.
But, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. So we will see.
A studio over in Port Jervis. I know the people you're talking about. And yeah, what a great opportunity. You will survive Zoom, John. You will.
Hey, okay. And if you have somebody doing the heavy hitting, like sharing the videos and stuff, because that's the part that can be difficult if you're by yourself and having to share the screen and do all that stuff. But yeah, you just get
if you've seen my stuff, it's always I talk a little, then I show a clip, then I talk a little and I show a clip. So it's like being a one-man band. And it's not like I'd show a movie and just talk. It's too much going on. And I thought, I don't see myself doing that in my house. It just seemed like too much. So anyway, we'll see how it goes, and maybe I'll do more of it. And yeah.
That's great. You have to make sure everybody knows, like, when you're doing it so they can zoom in with John.
Okay.
So I always ask the hard-hitting questions. Who was your biggest celebrity crush? Or at least we'll put it in the classic movie genre.
Well, I've told you this, I'm sure, because I introduced those movies, and I've shown, my big celebrity crush was always old-time movie actor Joel McCrea. He's my favorite. He's a
Oh,
terrific actor, but
wow.
he would be my celebrity crush. Growing up, I guess I was always so swept away by the musical stars. So, you know, I was obsessed with all of the Gene Kelly, Fred Astaire, Judy Garland, and I
Right.
got to meet Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly on the same night.
Oh,
I got my I've got my parents. It was so good of them. I was 15. I got them to drive me into Manhattan so I could attend the premiere of That's Entertainment Part 2, which was going to be star-studded. I think the tickets were $25. My sister joined us too, so it was a big $100 night in 1976. And they were all there. I had my autograph book at the top of the escalator, and they came in one by one. And it was Fred Astaire's birthday, which of course I knew, and I'd written him a poem, which I was able to give to him. And he thanked me, and he signed my book, and I met everybody that night. And so that was, I wouldn't call them celebrity. That wasn't really so much a crush, but those were the people that were my gods. Those were my gods. And the Joel McRae thing, I was an adult for. So
I forget what the one film you showed with him last year, or you may have shown two, but the one where he was like
two.
Yeah, I mean where he's like a soldier, particularly dreamy in that film.
Yeah, the more the merrier with Jean Arthur, which has that great scene of him kissing her neck on the stoop when she's trying to not fall for him, even though she's gone. It's a classic scene. Yeah, he's great at comedy. I also showed Stars in My Crown, the one where he's the parson about the typhoid pandemic, or the epidemic, rather. Beautiful film.
And wasn't that, I mean, just a crazy period? Because Wendy, I mean, kind of time-wise, that was post the city closing down and pre-Milford closing down.
What, the second week in March, Stephen?
Second week in March.
I can tell you exactly. I can tell you exactly when it was, because I had 2 gigs that week, and that was it. March 11th was the night I showed Stars in My Crown, a movie about a typhoid epidemic in a small town. The next night I showed Charlie Chaplin's The Gold Rush at the Delmonico Room at the Fauchère, and it was announced that night this would be your series ended, but the Fauchère had a couple to go, but it was announced that night this is the last night. And really, that was the night Broadway closed. So actually we went one night longer than Broadway because we did a show that night, but that was basically, I think of that as the night it all changed, March 12th. But I guess everybody might have a different, but obviously it was definitely that week for most people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was definitely that week. Wow. So much has changed in all our lives. So you're going to, the book that you have coming out, is it finished or it's a work in progress? Tell me where you're at with that.
It's finished. Basically, I turned it in October. My publisher is very happy with it. And actually just today I saw the cover and the back jacket and the complete design of the interior, including 100 photographs, some of which are in color. I'm not supposed to talk about it specifically yet, to sort of, to keep it under wraps a little longer. We're in talks about the end of the year and into award season next year. So, when things are award season is normal, and that would be part of the movie books that come out while the Oscar buzz is happening, that kind of thing.
Oh, that's fabulous.
Wow. It's hard to think. I mean, I want to believe everything's going to be normal, but it is a tad hard to think. I was going to say to you, if you've got a book coming out, you better get used to Zoom, because my niece just published a book that's being released in March, and everything she's doing is, it's all virtual. She can't go anywhere because we still can't go anywhere. It's very challenging to do things like this.
Yeah, I could do events, like I said, the film clips. I would always have a show that goes with my book. Whatever book is coming out, I have an hour program with clips that goes with it, which, I could probably do on Zoom, but you can't sign books on Zoom. You can't meet the people in that way. And, maybe the fact that the book isn't coming out for a while, that's the sort of good part of it, that maybe things would be closer to what we'd call normal, without rushing it.
Right. It's not so easy to figure it all out because we're all very unsure. Yeah, nobody knows anything at all. What makes you love Milford so much, John?
Oh my. Well, when we came here, I had the 20th anniversary in September being here, but I was still first. Earl was retiring and wanted to live close to the city, but not in my New York 1-bedroom apartment. So he wanted to be close, but, and our good friend Sally Gift and her then husband, who since passed away, Richard, lived by the water wheel, and we would visit them. And Earl would say, like, someplace like this place. And so he was here full time from then. And I gave up my New York apartment in 2012. So I've been a full timer these last 8 years. And I think, it's funny. At the beginning, I thought I would come out on weekends. But you're right. I fell in love. It's weird. My story is like a lot of people's story around here, right? You find you're falling in love with this place. In the beginning, you're not sure why, and but I think once you find out there's so many interesting people here, at the beginning you don't know anybody, and then as you meet more and more people, I always said at the beginning, I met everyone I met in Milford was all the people I wanted to meet in New York but never could. And it's like the community, because when you're in New York, you basically only meet the people who are doing what you're doing, and you don't really meet anybody else, or I didn't. But here, if you went to a party or an opening, everybody did something different. And it was like, wow, I would never have met you, even though we probably lived in the same neighborhood in the city. So I do love it. I love it. I have no thoughts of leaving it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you, I think that just in terms of kind of like the LGBTQ community here, that, when you're in New York, you can be a gay man and only hang out with gay men, and that can be perfectly your life and you don't think about it. But when you're in Milford or in a smaller community like this that's so diverse, then, you're meeting everyone and you get so much exposure to things. New York, it's the melting pot, but I feel like I've learned more here than I did in my time in the city.
And we didn't even know about the gay community in Milford when we moved here at all. Didn't know anything about that. And I didn't know there was a film festival that I could walk to from my house. So there was a lot of really kind of like, it was just kind of a magical place. And it's been a crazy year for everybody, but just in different ways. Earl passed away in May. It was unrelated to COVID, but it's been obviously a challenging year. I had my book to work on through October. Earl passed in May. But I'm seeing someone now, and I'm things are, even in grieving times and bad times, good things can happen. And I mentioned it because you were talking about Milford. My friend Michael has shown me places in Milford that I could walk to that I never knew about. So I've had this whole other experience of this community in the last few months.
Fantastic.
And again, like I said, even in really challenging, really sad times, there can be surprisingly good things that can happen and turn things in a good direction. So,
well, you're both saying the same thing. We have a really extraordinary community in Milford. The opportunity with arts in Milford, from Black Bear Film Festival to the Readers and Writers Festival, one of our newest festivals. Robert Khyber is opening up the Pike County Arts Center. You probably don't even know this, or maybe you do, John.
I see it on Facebook, I see that what the progress being made. Sure.
And new, it's going to be a gallery downstairs and the theater upstairs, and that's going to be right on 739. So the Milford Theater has been sold, and there's renovations that are going to happen there. So, to me, we've got it all going on Milford. It's an amazing community, and it feeds you. It can feed you in a way. I'm in New York City for work, and I can crank out work here, but Milford feeds me in a way that New York can't. It just can't.
Well, even when I still had the New York apartment, I was still doing most of my writing up here because I could sit in this little office I'm in with a beautiful view of my street and the window right here. No jackhammers, the usual stuff you deal with if you're trying to concentrate in New York. And so it was very easy to adapt that part of my life to being up here. And, I adore Manhattan. I've adored it since I was a little kid and would beg to go to Radio City Music Hall to see the Easter show and all that stuff. And I still love it. But, I feel like once I was writing and I started to lose the need for New York, and it's really a place for people who have to be there. And I felt like basically when I was leaving, I was sort of passing the baton to my niece and nephew in their 20s who were hungry for it. And it was sort of like, it's your time, because I kind of, as much as I love it, I'm kind of done and I don't have to be there. And so I'm fine with that. There's no longing for my old apartment or anything like that. But I loved it, but I kind of used it up. Yeah.
You don't even miss them. Listen, look at you're a writer. Look at some of the writers that have come out of Milford, Frank McCourt, Angela's Ashes. I mean, we could just go down the list. I always say there's something about Milford, and Stephen, agree with me on this. It's because, don't you think it's because New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania all come together in some kind of incredible vortex that just attracts? This is my own theory.
Bermuda Triangle.
Vortex.
It is, John. It's like our own Bermuda Triangle. But when you think of the people that have written books here, people that have made films, people that have come, I have this theory. It's funny you said about you were done with Manhattan. I have this theory about Milford and our area, that also when it's done with you, it purges you. There are people that have moved on just to other places. I've been in Milford 21 years and know a lot of people, right? But a lot of the ones that moved on, it was just because it just wasn't happening or fitting for them anymore. And the place itself just is like, I'm done with you.
Okay, I hope that's not the case.
You're good. It wants you, and you got this you got this book coming out.
Before we go, John, we usually give the floor to our guests if they have any kind of, last words or promos or anything they want to say. So the floor is yours.
Haven't I been talking for an hour?
But this might be a chance to say something like, I have a website.
Well, no, I can't wait for this quarantine isolation to be over. Whatever it is, whether it's opening night on Broadway or the first night of the film series or my first book event with people, I keep trying to think about how happy we are going to be on that day. Yes. That first overture in New York. Like I said, the first time I'm in front of an actual audience, or we're still going through. As I said, we've all had our own challenges this year, and knowing that there is going to be that moment, even if we don't know when exactly, which is so frustrating. But to try to keep our eye on the prize and try to make ourselves as happy as we can until then. That's all.
Absolutely.
John, how can people find the Zoom show you're going to be doing?
Actually follow me. I'll probably be posting things as that gets closer. Follow me on Instagram, john.dileo.12, or on Facebook or Twitter @JohnDiLeo. So,
perfect.
I'm not that hard to find, so you'll find.
You know where you go.
You have a fabulous website too, johndileo.com.
Johndileo.com. Yes, of
Now,
course. Thank you. Thank you.
People go to the website to find the books, get to Amazon.
No, I always send people to Amazon because it's the easiest way. And when people order books on Amazon, they reorder. In I wouldn't say bulk necessarily, but they order a chunk, and it's good to keep them reordering because they're the biggest seller of books at the moment. It's just a fact. And so, I always send people to Amazon. Thank
so
you.
just type in that name and you will find 6 wonderful books and a 7th soon enough.
Right.
And John, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I've said this to you in private and I say it in public. I really miss you. I miss the film series and can't wait till we can do it again.
Same here. Thank you guys both. It was
Thank
really
you
fun
for
to
everything that you've done for our community and will continue to do going forward. As we say, you're a keeper.
Amen.
Thank you.
Well, and thank you all for watching, and good night. And we will see you for the Triversity's Got Talent preview show next week. Until then, good night.
Good night, everybody.